to order. First thing that we will do is cover our norms, and the very first one is all are welcome to join the table for discussion. So if any of you along the wall there would like to join us, you are more than welcome to. Secondly, we will stay focused on the agenda topics out of fairness for participants, presenters, and the public. We will listen to others and share in a respectful manner. And then lastly, Finance Committee follows us, so we will be mindful of our time, and we will end promptly at 5:15. The first item on the agenda is our library processes. There has been a lot of attention drawn to library books, book fairs, and Scholastic. There has also been some miscommunication out in the public on social media, even within the news. So I spoke with our librarians with us today, and we thought it would be nice to have some clarification on what our board policy is, what our processes are, to make sure that everyone knows that we are following these procedures and we're not deviating from those, okay? So with us today we have Melissa Corey, she's librarian at Rubidoux, Stephanie Grable is librarian at SCAPE, and then Elizabeth Hoskins is at Fody, the librarian. So I will turn it over to them.
I'm going to go ahead and project the handouts that are at your table. We have 3 separate handouts. One that goes through kind of the processes and procedures that we go through when we purchase any book that appears on our library shelves. The second one is the official school board policy for selection of materials, and the last one is an infographic detailing how the kind of behind the scenes of the book fairs. So I'm going to put this up on the screen, but we're going to start with a topic, now that it disconnected me, that is, again, one thing that I've always tried to make sure of in the past few years, working in libraries, is making sure that we make our language plain. I always say that librarians speak the librarian language and school board members speak the school board language, and it's really about kind of translating those so we all have the same understanding. So we're going to explain some things that are very technical, but in a way that I think any member of the public or any person who hasn't worked in the library field can understand. So I'm going to turn it over to Elizabeth, and she's going to go through our first section of our library policies and procedures.
So on those handouts, there's one that says collection analysis on the top, and that is the first thing that we are going to cover. Collection analysis is just a part of any librarian's job and responsibilities, and it is essentially how we get to the answer to what books should we be procuring. And so when we do that, there are a variety of ways that happens. The first one, and probably the most common, is using vendor software. So all of the larger book vendors, or most of them, like Follett and Mackin, they offer a place for you to upload your collection and then provide data about that collection back to you, typically almost immediately. And so that's something that is done most often at the beginning of the year. I usually do it at least twice a year so that I can stay informed about what my collection looks like. And so that looks like things like the average age of the collection. So when you look at the publication date of all of our books across the whole thing, what is that average year of publication? So how old and aged are things? It also gives you information about the number of items that you own per student. And so different states are going to have different numbers about what that expectation is. But we generally try to keep something around at least 10 items per student in our collections. You're going to see a balance of fiction and nonfiction. Again, that's something that in the library world, a lot of people are worried about having a balance between those. We also take into consideration access that our students have to technology and nonfiction materials through databases and things like that as well. And then there are other pieces of the software that add additional reporting to things like if I have a series, what books am I missing in that? It adds information about representation and if all of our students are able to see themselves in our collections. And then things like award-winning books. And so here's a list of books and how can we fill that in with some additional ones that will help us keep everything in good shape and good order. And then also out-of-date information as well. So especially in nonfiction, you're looking at things like computers and technology. That's going to go out of date and out of being accurate. And so we want to make sure we're collecting those. And then additionally, we look at circulation data, what's popular, what our students are checking out. We also look at the physical condition of the collection. And so that is partially done through every day checking in and out. When a book comes back, I'm looking at it and taking care of things, discarding things if they're damaged past the point of being able to repair them. But also in our inventory process, we go through every year, that is one of our roles, is to scan every single book in our library on an annual basis. And that allows us to add an additional physical assessment of it, but also to identify anything that's missing. Because while we would love students to always be super responsible and collect, check them out before they walk out the door, on occasion it happens that they don't, and it may not come back to us. And so we're doing that as a final check each year to make sure that we know exactly what we have in our space so that we can prepare for any future expenditures. And that is collection analysis.
So I'm going to cover the process we use to actually select the materials that we're purchasing. This is just kind of a summary of a process that honestly for me takes multiple hours spread out over multiple days, if not weeks. I really can't emphasize the amount of, like Elizabeth mentioned, not only analyzing the current collection, but analyzing what needs you have in your school building for library books. So, talking to teachers and seeing what units they might be teaching, if you need more nonfiction for a biography project, things like that. So obviously that first step is that evaluation piece, evaluating the current collection, seeing what needs you have, whether it's, expanding certain genres or buying more books in certain series. Another piece of that is obviously looking at our reading levels of our students. I'm at a middle school, but my reading levels in my library go down to 3rd grade for the most part, all the way, up to our 8th grade range. If only because I know that our students who are struggling need to be able to find books that they are able to read at that level. The second piece of that is using various vendors to search for books. So we have a really wide variety of approved vendors that we purchase books from. And those vary again based on our grade levels as well. So there are some that are very general K through 12 vendors like Mackin, Follett, again, those companies that are focused on books just for any grade level. But for elementary, there are a lot of vendors that focus specifically on elementary level books. Children's Plus is one that services quite a few of our libraries in that range. So again, we're taking that information, we're putting that information into those vendors, really searching the same way you would on Amazon for different books. But the difference is that whenever we're looking for books to purchase, all these vendors, including Amazon as well, they all include different ratings. So different ratings based on age levels, grade levels, interest levels, again, feeding into reading level as well. And we're using all that to make sure that we're building essentially what is an age-appropriate collection. So working with the grades that we work with, what are the age levels, reading levels, grade levels that we want to see and that we're curating into our collection so that we know that when students are selecting books, they're going to be, appropriate, but also meeting the needs that they have at those particular age ranges that we're serving. One other piece of that is reading professional reviews. So if you're searching for a book and you're wondering what it's about, obviously you have a content summary. But one thing that's really critical in libraries is looking for those professional reviews. So we have all kinds of reviews built into every single search function of those books. We're looking at, again, different sources for those, and we'll cover some of those here in just a little bit. But those reviews give you a deeper look at, again, the content of the book, the events that occur in the book, the characters, the plot, things like that. But also make basically a recommendation on whether or not it should be purchased for a school collection. And then again, we're evaluating each and every book to determine, based on all of this information, if it should be purchased. Another piece of that I don't have listed here, however, is professional development. It's really important that our librarians receive the same, really a different type of professional development than even our teachers do, because obviously this is really technical work, and there's hundreds of books published each year across the entire scope of children's and young adult and middle grade literature. And so looking at trying to track all those books is very, very time consuming. So whether it's professional development we take on our own time, attending conferences, attending workshops, the more we can learn about the books that are currently being published in the last couple of years, the more informed we can be. Because again, we're using all these different factors for each and every single book to make that final decision on purchasing. The second handout that's listed there is our selection criteria. That is included in our board policy, and so you can refer to that as well, but it really focuses on, like Elizabeth mentioned, a lot of those factors of seeing if information's out of date, seeing if it represents different cultural, ethnic groups, their contributions to society as well. So I mentioned a little bit about ratings and reviews. I'm going to hand that over to Stephanie to cover those ratings, and I'm also going to pull up an example on our screen too.
I'd like to just ask a question.
Sure.
When you say we are going through this, is it each librarian at her own school, or are you collectively going through them? Or what do you mean by we?
So each individual librarian is doing that particular evaluation for their collection and the selection of materials as well.
So when we, when we talk about evaluating your content using various criteria, Melissa hit on a lot of that already. And so we've pulled up an example on your screen here of what a grade, interest level, reading level looks like from some of these review places like Professional Library, Mackin, Kirkus Reviews. We focus on grade level. Everyone's grade level is going to be different depending on if you're in elementary school, middle school, high school, and then in elementary school you do have K through 5, and we also have K through 6 in town. So we have to make sure that we have enough grade level books within our buildings, and that differs to make sure that everyone has a chance to read on their grade level. We also talk about age level in combination with grade level because it is important. You may have, for example, a second grader that is reading at a 5th grade level, or you may have a 5th grader that is reading at a 2nd grade level. So we have a wide variety of reviews and rating systems on how we go by book and make sure that we purchase those accordingly so that each of our students, based on their age and grade, have something that they are interested in and that they feel comfortable reading. Then when we talk about interest level and reading level, we kind of go back and forth with accelerated reader and guided reading and scholastic reading tests, and you also have Lexiles, depending on the teachers, how they want to go about that. But for the most part, when you do purchase books, I like to, and I've almost every single elementary librarian I know will go through and will go make sure the Lexiles are on the inside of the cover so that students who know their Lexile can say, oh, well, I understand that this book may be for a 4th grader, but I'm a 2nd grader and I'm reading at a 680, 790, whatever, so that's going to fit me. I like to write that on the inside of the cover so that way it doesn't draw too much attention, because we don't want to stigmatize children based on their reading level, because they all want to find books, and we want to make sure that they find books that interest them, that are age appropriate and grade appropriate. So your professional reviews are available from library journals like SLJ, Booklist, Publishers Weekly. You've heard us talk about Mackin, Kirkus Reviews. Scholastic also has their own reviews as well. In fact, a lot of these publishers, if you look on the back covers of their book, they might even have a little block now by the ISBN that will tell you the age range and the grade range, so that way we know it as librarians, the students know it right away, and parents also know it when they bring it home as well. When we talk about the ratings, you can go through the professional reviews. It'll give you examples, like we said, plot summary, character development, age range, age level, all that stuff. All of these reviews and rating processes really kind of swing well into book fairs. So Scholastic has the same access to all these professional reviews, including their own professional reviews, that they use to have their book fairs. So Melissa's going to pull up. You should have one at your table as well. So what I'm going to talk about are the book fair information communications. So really how Scholastic book fairs allow for open communication for purchasing, not just for students and families, but for staff as well. So there's a lot of communication and behind the scenes things that go into having a Scholastic book fair at your school. Again, these are something that are totally dependent on your school. If you have K through 5, if you have K through 6, if you have a middle grade, or if you are one of those lucky high schools that gets a tabletop fair. So you talk to Scholastic based on your grade levels and the ages of your students. They will send you cases that are exactly what you need. Each of those cases is individually labeled by grade level and age level as well. They're even color-coded, which is very helpful when you are trying to put something together. So 3 weeks before the fair, we promote with book trailers. These are brief 30-second videos, kind of like a movie trailer for the books. We show those to students. They get very, very excited to see what books are going to be their way at the Scholastic Book Fair. We'll post save the dates on social media. We always have to get that approved by our individual building admin to make sure it goes out on the appropriate social media pages for our school. And we have the ability through Scholastic to create an online website and e-wallet information for your current fair. So each fair that we have, that means the last 32 fairs I have put on myself, I'll have a different website that I create that will pair with that individual book fair, since the books are always changing.
So they can go to that website
Oh, yes.
and pick out a book and then find it, the parents or whoever, the guardian,
Yes.
and find out the information about particular books.
Correct. And I'll get to that in just a minute. So 2 weeks before the book fair, as you can see, I live for a book fair, so I do a whole lot of weeks of prep. 2 weeks before the book fair, I send home a parent letter. This will give out dates, important information, where the building is located. I work with Kristen O downtown, so I make sure that I have all of those parent letters, and all of our librarians do actually. So I send home, personally in my building, Chiquis, Arabic, Spanish, and English book fair packets. So when we send home that letter giving us all the information about our individual fair, we also have a book fair merchandise guide, which are just kind of those, they're almost a newspaper feel, and they'll give you a brief description of some of the awesome books that are going to be at your Scholastic Book Fair. I'll pair those together and send it home with another informational, almost like a half sheet, that talks about the online book fair, and it'll have the website, and we'll talk about the e-wallet, and then of course I will promote more on social media. Now the e-wallet, for anyone in the room that may not be aware of that, that's something that Scholastic has where once parents have this information, they can go on to the Scholastic website that we've created, where you have access not just to the fairs of the books, but all of Scholastic's books for that grade level. And you can pick out a book, you can see the price of it at the fair, and the parents can put money directly into an online account for their student. So that way, if you have particular books you want your student to check out, and you don't just want to give your credit card to an 8 or 9-year-old, that way they can come, we'll pull it up on the Scholastic cash register that they send us, and then we just click a button, and that is already in their account. They get their book, and we send them on their way. 1 week before the fair, I know this is going to be shocking to you, but I update again on social media. We promote the online shopping. That is when your link will officially go live for parents to start checking out the book fair. They can go on, and we'll have online merchandise catalogs that I send home, but they can also find that in multiple languages on the website. Your e-wallets will be ready to go. I'll have a staff preview so that teachers can come in. They can create both a physical wish list for their classroom libraries, or they can choose to just eat the breakfast I provide into an online wish list as well. And then I host a student preview, so that way all the students in the school can come in that week before. They can look through the book fair, see what they want, get an idea what they want, write down titles and prices. That way they can take it home, they can give it to parents, and they can discuss how or what they want to buy or spend. Then book fair week, we're open for students to shop during school hours with teacher permission. You can't skip class and just hang out at the book fair all day. Online book fair shopping is also open to parents that whole week, and then I always make sure that our elementary fairs are the same week as parent-teacher conferences. That way, we really encourage parents and families and siblings, everyone to come to the book fair, so that way you can shop, and if they're shopping together and they're excited about the books they're getting together, then we know they're going to be excited to read them with their parents when they get home. So it's a really great way to encourage the love and spark book joy for our students.
So what you're saying is there should be no surprise by the time the child actually has the book in hand and taking it home to parents. There doesn't seem to be much room for misreading what the book is about.
I wouldn't think so. We do send a lot of information home for the book fair, and there are many avenues available for parents to seek out information through Scholastic and what they're providing. Yeah.
Because I know I love to watch and walk around the tables, look at all the books,
Yes.
but by that time when they get to, their parents have already been prepared to say, okay, these are the ones we're getting, or even choose ahead of time, even if they're there walking around.
Right. Now, every now and then, you might get a student that comes in with a blank check or a credit card, and that's an immediate phone call to the parent. That's an immediate phone call. In 14 years, it's only happened twice, but both immediate phone calls.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
How did that work out, the phone calls?
Believe it or not, the mom said, yeah. I was like, are you sure? You don't want to cap it? And the child's very responsible. They only spent $40. So. That is all I have for book fairs and for us in general. Are there any other questions that we can answer while we're here?
Yeah, I have a question. When a student checks out a book, is there a way that parents can be notified of the books their children are checking out?
So on the first infographic, we actually did include our policy on student records. So student library records are protected under FERPA the same way that all other educational records are. So we can release those to either the student or the parent. We can't release to third parties, we can't release to teachers even, because again, it's private information. The one thing that is different, and this goes with, again, some of the technical parts of our job, our circulation software is a closed system. In fact, for Elizabeth and Stephanie to add new librarians to that system, they actually had to get notarized last year because there have been, obviously with every type of technology, data breaches. And so they take, Alexandria is the name of our checkout system, they take all of those technical considerations very, very seriously. And so there are no checkout systems in existence right now. There was another one that considered that for a while, Destiny, which is part of Follett's group. But because of those technical issues with are we really releasing the information to who they say they are, it's no different than going into the office and you have to present your driver's license to prove who you say you are. So there is no way automatically for a parent to be notified of that. However, obviously, we are always willing to work with parents. We work with parents all the time. I will say that probably each of us get requests from parents, for that kind of questions about, we can put a restriction on a student's account. If they come home and they say, hey, my kiddo really wants to read scary books, but I don't think they're ready for scary books. Again, I have a child that loves scary books, but she wasn't ready for Mary Downing Hahn. And we found that out when she checked out one of Mary Downing Hahn's books, which is for an 8 to 10-year-old. And so I, as a parent, handled that and said, let's return that book and find something else. But I could have contacted her librarian and said, hey, could you put a notation on her account, must check out unicorns and whatever else, she might be interested in. But I know for a fact that I have a student right now that is in that restricted section. So working with a parent one-on-one is totally fine, but it's from that technical side of things that those companies haven't wanted to release that information.
So like if you go to the public library and they send you like due date reminders,
Mm-hmm.
that's an email notification.
Mm-hmm.
So those systems at like a public library exist, but not in like our school libraries.
We do have the ability to send to student email. Okay, so we do send overdue notices to student email. And they have a way that they can look at, what books they currently have checked out. But it's, again, because of that student issue of student records being under FERPA, it's directly to that one-to-one from our system automatically emails the student. Now, if the parent wants to sit down next to the student and access that the same way that they would check grades in Power School, that's totally acceptable as well.
Yeah, because like I can check all my kids' grades on Power School without them being with me.
Mhm.
And so I didn't know if there's a way we could load it to where the library books they have, I could also see. And I'm not trying to chase a rabbit trail here. We're in a community with many different worldviews and lifestyles. And we need parents to trust that when they send kids to school, that they're being respected as the parents. And a lot of people think that this is just a rabbit that we're trying to chase, but we have books in our libraries right now, in all 3 libraries of our high schools, that have graphic sex in them. And that bothers me because I would not want my high schooler reading graphic sex. We have All Boys Aren't Blue at Lafayette, The Bluest Eyes at all high schools, and then the Kirkus Review of Tricks, which is used for reviews, described one book as graphic sex, rape, drugs. And so as a parent, I don't want my kids, maybe other parents wouldn't want them, not every parent. I'm not saying that we ban the books. I'm just saying somehow can we work with parents that are sending their kids to make sure that these subjects are not being exposed to their children. Another subject that worries me is like suicide. Like at 6 of our schools, including Hosey Elementary, we have 13 Reasons, which is a book about a teenager who kills herself and then leaves a tape to her best friend. If my student, if my child checks out a book on suicide, as a parent, I would like to be notified somehow. Because that is a topic that if they're exploring it, I would like to be involved in that exploration. Because on our rules over here of how we select material, it says, we provide material on opposing sides of controversial issues so that young citizens may develop, under guidance, the practice of critical reading and thinking. Now that under guidance is everyone but the parents, correct? As of right now?
No, in fact, we work one-on-one with parents.
But I'm not notified, like, I would be dependent on my child.
Again, I would ask you if they're physically checking out a library book, where are those library books at? Are they in their backpacks whenever they come home from school?
Well, I mean, older kids may not do that. What I'm saying is, I just want to have the conversation. If the answer is no, we don't want to go down that road, that's okay.
The answer is not no. I think it's from a technical standpoint that is something that these companies are very concerned about from a data breach standpoint. Again, knowing really in the library world, this became a really big issue with Follett, which is the company that offers Destiny, which is an alternative piece of software than the one that we use. It's more expensive, but they considered that. They tried to turn on that feature, and it became that question of who is able to access that information. Because again, they don't necessarily have the same structure that a group like Power School would have. Okay. The one thing that I would say is if there's ever a concern, reach out to the librarian, reach out to the administrator at the building level. Okay.
Also, if I could just piggyback real quick, if there is a particular issue that you as a family don't feel comfortable with, I would recommend having that conversation with your students before they even make it to the library to check out something like that. So if you know that, let's take suicide since we were talking about it, is a topic that you don't necessarily want your children to check out at any level, whether it be middle school, high school, then I would recommend having, hey, you know what, I just don't think you're ready for that conversation. If you do want to check out that book, then maybe you and I can have a conversation or together as a family, and then we can go to the public library and get something of that nature.
Yeah, there's a big trust level when we send kids to school of what they're going to experience and interact with. I mean, a kid could read a book in a library and never bring it home. I mean, there's just a trust level, and I think parents want to know that the district is doing everything they can to build trust between the worldviews and lifestyles being honored for all parents. And I'm just trying to have a conversation about it.
And I will say we completely respect a parent's right to choose what their individual student can and cannot read. They can, like we're mentioning.
I don't know every book. Like my problem is I don't know every book at Central's library. And so like it's going to be a reactive position to me rather than a proactive. See, a proactive, when I got a notification saying my child checked out X, I can go review that book. But if I'm never notified of that, I'm always playing catch up of what my child has experienced. And I would ask, like, is graphic sex age appropriate at the high school level?
Not having this, so I'm at a middle school, okay, so I can't speak to books that I don't have in my collection or that I haven't previously had the opportunity to review. The one thing I will say is that when you read professional reviews, you have to read a variety of those. We mentioned grade level, interest level, things like that. A lot of times there's a lot of mismatch between those, and that's why we're kind of playing this balancing act. okay, which books work at which particular levels. I will say that a lot of high school books have those grade ranges that are at the upper levels of high school. I don't know if those particular books do because they're not in my personal collection or my library collection. So I would have to do this whole process of due diligence. I would have to go through those and look at those ratings in depth. I really do, again, feel like as far as, in general, obviously selecting books based on these guidelines, on the selection policy, that again, we're trying to develop a collection that is age appropriate, that represents a wide range of lived experiences. And I will say that one thing about that is looking at individual parents, individual students, individual needs. Again, I don't think there's any group of individuals in the world today that work in public libraries, school libraries, that care more deeply about our students than librarians. And we can obviously all share those stories, but for the sake of time, we just simply don't have time for that. But again, working with those individual students and realizing that, for one, not every book is right for every student. Not every book is meant for every single student. Again, looking into working with parents, we're already doing that on a regular basis, for sure. Elizabeth, I think you had something.
I was just going to address, like the whole issue in terms of notification, it simply is not an integration that exists between, say, Power School and Alexandria. And so it's not something that we are saying that we are opposed to, we're saying it is not available. And when you look at it from the perspective of the number of students that we serve in our buildings, I cannot physically make a phone call to the students of 480 students as they check in and out books to let them know what they've checked out. And so right now, because of the software that we use, because of the company's decision to limit those types of access, we can't change.
With the child's consent, could a parent's email be added to the due date reminder?
I believe there is a space for another contact email in each patron.
And did we set when that due date reminder is sent out? Did we set it to where within 24 hours they get the due date reminder for 30 days?
Our system's set to automatically email upon the due date. And there's really no way to change that necessarily.
So it looks slightly different in an elementary form. I am constantly, daily, sending out reminder notices, and I also always like to make sure that there's a little picture of what book they've checked out so they remember to bring it back. So I highly encourage anyone who has a young child at home, those reminders go out weekly. So they should have that in their backpack. Now, if it gets from the library to the backpack, that's a totally different story. But again, at an elementary level, we are giving out those reminders that parents should have those. And another thing that we work with parents constantly, especially at an elementary level, and I can't fix what I don't know. So I always like to have these conversations with parents. So if your students at a younger level, if there's a particular book, I just had somebody the other day, a student that said, my parents don't find anything of value in Diary of a Wimpy Kid. I really want to read it. And I said, then we're not going to check it out today, but maybe you can bring your parents by the book fair and we can have a conversation. So, if you're openly communicating with your librarian and wanting to put certain restrictions on a student, what they can and can't check out, we're more than happy to do that. But again, we can't if we don't know that from the parents.
Is that done through the program, the restriction?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just something simple we can type in.
So at a high school level, how would I eliminate any books that have graphic sex in it if I don't want my kid to read it in high school?
You contact the librarian. We put what's called an alert note, so whenever the student goes to check out, that will pop up, needs to check out this particular type of book, or restricted from checking out this particular type of book.
And it won't matter what book they bring. Anytime it's scanned, that student will have that
every
alert
time
that
they
will
check
pop
out.
up.
But does the book is labeled that?
The student has that restriction.
I understand, but how does the librarian know that book has that? I don't expect librarians to know every book in their library.
No, not necessarily, but I would say that since we're the ones purchasing the books, we're aware of which books would be considered within that category, or if we see the restriction pop up, then we're going to take a second to review that book at that particular time.
Thank you.
So the book itself doesn't elicit a response, it's the parent's notification typically that will pop up as a red flag.
Yes.
Could the parents also put a note in that my kid is not allowed to check out any books at your school, and they can take them to the local library and help them pick out books on their own?
They could. I've had a student in the past who,
It's not allowed.
their parents were concerned that he was spending too much time reading and not doing homework and other things. And the request was made, actually with Ms. Studer at the time, that he not be allowed to check out library books because he was spending too much time with his nose buried in a book and not doing other homework. And so, we worked through that with that parent.
Mr. McMillan, I'll follow up with the Director of Technology just on the parent notification piece to see if that's something that we can do. We can talk about that with software.
And I'm not looking for shock and awe. I could have came in here and read paragraphs and tried to like make a big show. I literally have just a genuine concern on behalf of parents in the community.
No, we understand.
And so I'm not trying to be a thorn in the side. I'm just trying to say that ultimately, if we're going to get as many students to our buildings, which is what we need to do as a school district, every student that we get to keep in our district is a value to our district, then we're going to have to gain trust with as many parents as we can. And so one way we can do that is just involving them and informing them on every educational experience their kid has.
Sure. I understand.
Well, the other thing is that if the public libraries can notify parents when their kids check out things, maybe you're not using the right software. Maybe you should be looking at what the public libraries are using.
Well, this is very school-specific. What the public libraries use would be hundreds of thousands of dollars. They use a consortium system called Evergreen now, so that would definitely be outside of our budget. There's just a few options for school software, but we'll work with Dr. McGinnis to look at what options there are for any kind of parent notification. It's just that, again, Destiny is one of the bigger vendors out there for that, and they went through this entire process a year ago where they tried to come up with a system to notify parents and simply could not because of because of the liability to that company. So no other school library software offers that as an option.
As a notification
It's a
feature.
notification.
That's ridiculous. Parents should know whatever their kids are doing.
Ask them, ask your children.
Okay. Any other questions as far as, yeah,
Is
Reba.
there a process for classroom books? Like I subbed in a first grade, there were hundreds of books in there.
Which is a great problem to have.
Well, the students actually would bring me books that they thought were inappropriate, and I had to agree.
If it's your classroom, you're not checking
I was subbing,
Oh, okay.
so I just loved to know.
What was
But
appropriate? I think we should read them too before we hear a review from someone else.
no, it was just
I can read
students.
some.
The students were,
We'll do that on another time.
it was first grade.
Oh,
It was first grade.
I'd like to hear it.
They just
Yeah, I'd like to hear
followed
it. Yes.
They were-
Reba, you can just shoot me an email and I can follow up with that building, that teacher and that principal. Any other questions about library processes?
But I get that question.
So in the,
Yeah.
in the survey that went out,
Yes.
to people's text messages, and saying that there were pornographic materials in the grade schools, are there?
No, we do not have pornographic materials in our elementary school libraries.
And I believe you're referencing a survey that was not our survey.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, we'll move to agenda item number 2, the role of the instructional coach, and I'll hand that over to Mrs. Studer.
I am so excited. I've been very quiet this year. At board meetings, we've been working the plan, the professional learn plan, that was approved back in June. And I'm excited to share the work that we've been leading up. I know Dr. Lau in January and February shared with you data. And there's something called there's a book out there and it talks a little bit about the phrase where we can have so much data that would become like information for like you just shared a bunch of data, but you don't know what to do about the data. What I hope to do today is share with you guys what have we been doing around this data that you're seeing in the academic performance. And I'm here to celebrate a group of individuals that have been the backbone of the work in curriculum and instruction. So Vic, Colin, Caleb, and Jenny are all back here, and they are just part of our team. I passed out a folder here, so I'd like to take you through a journey through this folder. And I want to read for you guys the definitions that sometimes you may hear instructional coaches, sometimes you may hear curriculum advisors, sometimes you might hear curriculum coordinators. We've had all of it in the last 24 years that I've been in the district. But these individuals, this is a system and it's research-based that follows the work of Diane Sweeney to support teachers in better practices and designing learning experiences that positively impact student achievement. The work of an instructional coach directs professional development, ensures curriculum fidelity, supports teachers and innovative practices, and locates resources to support their work. They also seek opportunities to dismantle inequalities related to student data, curriculum, and instruction practices. And so you'll see the list of our names of our instructional coaches and the places that they are targeting their work. Now, for example, you'll see two individuals, Heather Wiedmer, she serves K2 Hosea, and then Angie Clausen serves 3-5. That was a school that was placed on comprehensive, and we wanted to ensure that those teachers had the right supports. And K2 work looks totally different than 3-5 work. And so we supported and surrounded those teachers with, and the principals, in meeting the needs of those kids. If you turn to the back, this is the work of SJSD instructional coaches. We have shared this with principals and what their roles are. I will say that our one of the things that I'm very protective of, they are not evaluators. Okay, they do not evaluate a teacher's work. They're there to be a support to the teacher. And so teachers don't have time to research all the things that are going on in education. And we're pulling out of a pandemic still. And we're working through the impact of that pandemic still in our classrooms. And so we need the instructional coaches to be on the forefront of what's happening in education and better practices to education. They're encouragers, they're supportive for teachers and principals, they celebrate mastery, they share out the great work of our teachers, they lead whatever we're doing in district initiatives. So the U-Fly program, that was a hat carried by one of our instructional coaches. And so she goes around our district supporting teachers and the foundations of science of reading. We have other individuals that are leading work. Vic and Colin are working really hard right now to lead the work of formative assessment at the high school level. We purchased a program, Mastery Connect. And so we're circling around supports to support our EOC tested areas in the work of Mastery Connect. And what does it mean? What do we mean by formative assessment? They also look and study data. They co-plan with teachers, they model teach, so they push into the classrooms and they show what a model lesson would look like. They pull teachers out of the classrooms and go show them peers. Okay, they do a lot of peer observation models. They do what we call co-teaching model. So maybe the teacher would teach, but the instructional coach would be on the side as a guide, and they would also do some parallel teaching together. They really are the collaborators and thinking partners for our teachers. And again, the last bullet is so important to us. They're really the trusted advisor. Okay. So if you look at the next page, this is all the work that we've been leading. And then life's little infographic here. So I just want to pull out how much work these individuals have been leading. So we have the emerging language and literacy curriculum that Angie Chavez has been leading up. We have the Letters Partnership that Cambry's been leading up. Right now we have 73 educators going through Volume 1 and 2 of the work of Letters, which is a state Missouri Read, Lead, and Exceed initiative. And next year, it looks like we're going to surpass that number. I just looked at the responses from teachers. We opened it up to middle school teachers this year. We even had a high school teacher want to take part in the journey. And it looks like we're sitting at 92 individuals that would love to receive this professional learning. You can see that they also developed the team. So as a team, we developed the reason I love this role is because this is a role that I served. And one of the first conversations I had with the new teacher was, hey, talk to me about the outline of your class. What are the number of minutes that you spend on? And she was like, well, I don't know. And at the time, we didn't have a district consistent framework for what literacy instruction looked like. And so that's what we did as a team. We came together, we sat down with teachers, we had discussions about, if you're at Pershing Elementary and you're at Hosea Elementary and you're at Carter Park Elementary, these are the number of minutes that you have for literacy instruction. Same with math, all right? So that we have consistencies across our district of practices. You can also see the University of Florida. That's the U-Fly that you guys always hear about. But we also led, what's a lesson plan design look like? We need a consistent lesson plan for our district, our new teachers. What does that look like? What are foundational practices? What do we expect our teachers to do in the classroom? Like, you should be walking around. You should be talking to kids. Okay? Proximity does work. It helps with classroom management. And so we created a checklist. I provided that checklist. We'll look at that. We led the specialized classroom management, the Live with Boys Town over at Webster at the very beginning of the year. And then on the back, you'll see the work of Mastery Connect. Again, with the number of new teachers that we started out the year with 108. We're down to 102 new teachers. And so they support the new teachers. They're the sounding board for our new teachers. That's a lot of new teachers. That does not include the second-year teachers, which they also support. And so you're adding on another 56 teachers to that work. And then you can see that all of the curriculum work as well. And so right now, I'm excited to share that curriculum revisions are taking place in K-10 math. And I say 10 because we're trying to hit Algebra 2 there. And then you have middle school careers that's being redesigned. You have 912 science that's being redesigned. You have 912 physical education that Jenny is leading up. And you have 912 speech, debate, and theater. And so that's a huge load, and each instructional coach takes on the role of that curriculum, and I serve as support for them with consistent practices with that curriculum design. Now, they need support too, right? Our instructional coaches need support. So they are going through the UMKC Instructional Coach Network. There's not a lot of districts our size in this area of the state that have about 10,000 kids. And common practice in Kansas City is that they have an instructional coach, one per building, to serve with that principal. And that's where they go to receive the supports on what does the model of instructional coaching look like. And it's sustained through the year. And so they get to connect with the other instructional coaches in other districts to see the work that they're doing as well. So that is where we are in March right now with that work. But here you'll see the foundational practices that we've crafted up. This year, we crafted these up with the support of Kara Vandis. So this is when we go, our principals go to provide feedback in an observation or a walkthrough. You can see what the learning environment needs to look like, the management, the interactions. We're always studying ways for how to get students to respond, because the one that's doing the talking is the one that's typically doing the learning. And so you want students engaged in the learning. And then on the back of it, you'll see the lesson design. And we had to break it up by percent, because some schools are like 42 minutes, some schools are 50 minutes, some schools have 60 minutes. So we said, no, 10% of your time should be activating prior knowledge. Okay, that when kids walk in, you need to activate prior knowledge. There's too much research behind that. Then you have a mini lesson. Then you have the practice and learn time. And that doesn't mean, that means teachers are involved in that time. And you can see it says what the student will do and then what the teacher will do. And then without reflection, there is no learning. And so it's important to close out the lesson. And so that is 15% of the time. So this breaks it down for you. If you want to see the number of literacy minutes here, this is at the elementary setting. So in reading, they have 135 minutes for literacy. 30 minutes of it is for the University of Florida, the foundations of the science of reading. And you will see that the 3-6 will use a phonics-based spelling instruction piece. And then you will see at the top part there, the mini lesson, the reflection, the student work time, that's built in. And then we also incorporated a differentiated small group instruction time, where students rotate in within the small groups to receive supports, and that's based off needs, and that's 60 minutes. So that means the students rotate through different stations. And you can read there what they do during that particular time. I'm a big person still. You have decoding, but you also have encoding, which is the writing aspect. We need kids to be writers. After teaching 20 years in middle school, writing is so very important, and I still want to have explicit instruction on how, not assigning writing, but crafting of solid pieces of text. And so we study a lot of Minter text, and you can see how what that breakdown looks like. It fits into about the framework there for the 45 minutes of lesson design. We did the same thing with math. We sat down and set up a lesson design there. You have the 90 minutes for that work. Currently, right now, we're working with today, Vic and Cullen. We're leading up learning with our curriculum writers on the secondary revision of math curriculum and the selection of a resource to support that work. I also met with our elementary Caleb. We are redesigning or repairing, I guess, the elementary math curriculum there as well. And so each instructional coach is taking a grade level. We are being very explicit on the resources and materials that those new teachers use, that we just don't go to a website and pull off what we want to pull up, that we are pulling out the standards, the Missouri Learning Standards, what the state sets for us, and then a resource to support that work. So that is the breakdown of our work as an instructional coach and all the work of the curriculum and instruction team. I know that, I wanted to connect here because this is all on our district website too. And so you would just go to St. Joseph School District if you click on curriculum. Our curriculum is aligned to all of the Missouri Learning Standards. We went through a curriculum audit with the state at the very beginning of this year, and they were impressed by the work. But without these individuals, that would just be a plan. It would just sit in a website, and we would hope that it would be delivered out to the number of classrooms that we have throughout the district. These individuals are the walkers of the work for curriculum and sharing the practices of our content. So, are there any thinking or questions that you have? I can tell you that I'm a big person with Tier 1 instruction, and you can't achieve your priorities unless you have a very strong foundation. And so we are putting some pretty key elements into place where we're repairing and sustaining our Tier 1 instruction. We just have not had these pieces since 2018. And so we're circling back to ensure that all of our new teachers, all of our current teachers have input in this work, but also know that this is a consistent practice that we use in our district. Yes?
Are we teaching cursive writing, and what grade does that start in?
Yeah, there's not a standard that says, like, students will be exposed to cursive writing or that teachers teach cursive writing and the Missouri Learning Standards. I do know that about 2nd or 3rd grade, there are educators that do lead that work up.
But not everybody.
I don't believe so. I'd have to do some, it's not written in the, like I said, the Missouri Learning Standards.
Our Constitution is written in cursive, so if
Yeah.
all generations aren't
Yeah.
learning cursive, there'll be a day you
Yeah.
can't read the Constitution.
Yeah.
It's pretty important.
Yeah, and that's definitely something I could connect with teachers at the work at the elementary level. Here's what I would love. I would love them to be on grade level with reading and writing. And that would be a big win for our district if they were reading and writing at grade level.
How can you do that if kids are in classes where they are 3 or more years behind the curriculum?
You know, that's a great question, and we are leading up a lot of work in K-1-2, so that you will see, I think that you're seeing, and we are seeing big gains in, I would call our iReady data in the work of K-1-2, in the foundations of reading. We need students to be able to pull that print off the page to be able to read. We have so many intervention pieces, and what we're doing right now is making a consistent, I would call explicit and systematic way of teaching reading, and that's through the University of Florida, the Youth Life program. And if the question I ask a lot is if we have these intervention pieces in place, like we have reading teachers in place, are they working, or is it impactful? And then what can we do to support the work of our reading teachers? And we just, actually, we just led up the Dibbles work in our reading intervention, and that's helping also recover and repair some of the work for reading. And the Read 180 program, I don't know if you've talked to them about that much. Bethany's a huge person with that. So we also have a reading intervention program that Mr. Carell and I led up at the middle school. And it was a model that we used to have a long time ago. Mark and I went down to Platte City. We went to observe the model, and we brought it back here for students that aren't reading on grade level at the middle level. Because what we all know at middle level at times is they do have elementary reading teachers, but what happens when they get to middle school and we don't have that support anymore? And so now we've set up the Read 180 program as well.
Well, the district is doing much worse in math than reading. And I just do not understand how it makes sense to have a child sitting in a 5th or 6th grade math class with 2nd grade math skills. To me, that's just backwards.
Yeah, and that's why we have the small group rotations that have 60 minutes of intervention time built in for students to receive services. And what I love about our math interventionists and our reading interventionists is they're pushing into the classrooms now. And so our math interventionists or reading interventionists are sitting at the table and working with those students in personalized small group instruction that way. They're not necessarily pulling out, so.
Well, then by 8th grade, they should be able to do 8th grade math, but only 14% of our 8th graders can do 8th grade math. So I would suggest that it's not working.
Well, I can't say that it's not working because we just started this year.
I would say too, I think expanding early education will be huge. Just having more opportunities to have kids in school sooner. Because we know 42% of our kindergartners are coming in actually ready for kindergarten, so they're coming in with some delays even when they start school. So, and that's going to be an intentional focus as we move forward.
But that's, like writing off our current 8th graders. I just feel like kids should be put into classes that are appropriate for their skills.
We also want them to be exposed to grade level curriculum too, just so they're not receiving one.
No, but we could have an alternative school. We could have alternative classrooms. We could have classrooms for kids that are behind. And what it tells me, if it's acceptable to have a kid sitting in a 6th grade classroom that has 2nd grade skills, what that tells me is that 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th grade really aren't necessary anyway. So why are we dropping the hammer on kids that aren't attending? They're not being taught at school anyway, why would they go?
For the sake of time, we have just about 2 minutes left, so Stacia, I'm going to turn it over to agenda item 3, because we still have one more with Dr. Lau. So if we can go over the flow chart briefly.
Yes,
Thank
and this
you.
is another piece that I'm really excited about. So the instructional coach and the teachers actually came to us with this work. We are, again, trying to think through ways to be successful as a district in academic performance. And so one of the ways that we are looking at this is the addition of a physical science class at the 9th grade level. We used to have that. Then students move to biology, and then they have the different elective courses down there for the science, because you only need to have 3 credits of science before you graduate there. But we wanted to show you a 9th grader could carry that pathway, or if they're on the science track here, they could go to the honors biology, and then take honors chemistry, and then complete one of the other elective courses down underneath there. That's a switch. Right now, all students are taking biology their freshman year, and so perhaps maybe from, in discussion with teachers, that they feel that there's some standards in the physical science work that they want their students to have before they take the biology course, and they feel our students are at a disadvantage if you don't add this physical science course. And a lot of districts have this physical science course first, and then their sophomore year, they lead with a biology course. Colin, you want to add anything to that?
No, I think you explained it pretty well. It was in collaboration with teachers, and no matter which pathway a student takes, by the end of their sophomore year, so after their freshman and their sophomore classes, they will have exposure to all the domains of science. So it's physical science, both chemistry and physics components, earth and space science, which are actually integrated. We're currently revising that curriculum, but those standards will be integrated into all courses. And of course, the life sciences with biology, which is the EOC required course. And so I like the pathway because by the end of 10th grade, I have been exposed to all the branches of science, and now I start to do what is best for me. As you can see, that's kind of how we organized them down at the bottom of the page. So if I have an interest in life sciences, I can go take anatomy and physiology, or genetics or micro. I can get to the AP and DC classes. If I have more of a physical science interest, I could go chem or physics. Or if I like earth and space, go take earth and space or environmental. And so I like the pathway. Again, this was in collaboration with teachers, and I'm just thankful to them for leading up this work with us.
And I'm thankful for Colin for his leadership in this work. So on the back, you'll see the math pathways and the course offerings. Again, we offer 2 different pathways at the 7th grade. Starting at 7th grade, there you have an accelerated 7th grade course, which we use multiple data points to select that pathway. And then in 8th grade year, they move to Algebra 1, Geometry, and then you'll see by 10th grade year, they are in Algebra 2. And then, of course, there's the electives in the semester-long courses with that. The other pathway there is, we're changing it up a little bit. So in 9th grade, we are actually starting with Algebra 1, and then you can go to Geometry. What I'm very excited about is that we had only a semester of math applications. And math applications, you need 3 credits to graduate in the state of Missouri. And so we added a math applications 2. So that way a student can gain 3 math credits. And it's really the application of math in everyday life, everyday field. And so I'm excited about that work because underneath there, the students didn't have very many choices if they were not going to college. And so now we are offering that math applications course as a math applications 2 as a elective piece for them. So that would round out their 3 credits, and they would be successful in ensuring graduation there. So. Any questions? Vic and Colin have both led up that work. Vic, do you have anything to add to that?
I don't believe so. I guess the only thing that I would say is if there are some arrows on there that kind of point back and forth so that if a child is in pathway 1, but they decide that they want to go to college and they want to major in something that's in math, but they hadn't been in the accelerated course, so they didn't have as many opportunities. There are some other opportunities for them to kind of switch paths. There can't be all of the amount of arrows on there that are possible, or it's really hard to understand because I made one. I edited the number of arrows, but there are multiple opportunities. We don't ever want to hold someone back from something that they want to do, so they can do some switching back and forth.
So, yeah, and my daughter went to Bodie Middle School. We gave the diagnostic test for iReady. At that point, it showed that she probably should not be in Algebra 1. We moved her to Math 8. She was successful through high school. And I can tell you she's in a STEM field in her undergrad. So we wanted to ensure that there were on and off ramps at every level for all kids.
As a former math teacher, I'm very excited about the screener tool.
Yes.
So rather than making just a teacher recommendation for a student to be in honors, there'll be multiple data points that say this student should be in this particular course. So I'm excited for that work as well. Okay, we're going to move to item number 4, Dr. Lau.
Okay, this was one item that that Stacia did not have on her list, but the instructional coaches are also helping us with this particular work as well. This has to do with our multi-tiered system of supports. And so we're going to be bringing this to the board meeting later on this month and be asking for approval on an expansion of what we're already doing with this particular software platform. And really all it is a platform that supports the interventions that we're doing across the school district. So, and Stacia talked a little bit about that. So whether it's an intervention for a student that has behavior, some behavior issues, or if it's an attendance intervention for a student that is having trouble getting to school, or if it's an academic intervention, what this software allows us to do is to develop plans for the students, to monitor those plans, and to determine what the outcomes are. So the idea there is to return the student, if they're in a Tier 2 intervention, say academically, then those plans are made by the interventionist, and so then we can monitor how those plans are doing, what interventions are happening, and then they can be returned to Tier 1 when they reach that grade level mastery. So it's a great way for us to be able to understand if the interventions are working, if they're not working, and what do we do about them before the end of the year, and we have those outcomes. So this year we actually used the platform for all of our elementary schools, and our reading interventionists have currently about 1,000 readers that have reading intervention plans. And so we have found that our interventionists and some of our instructional coaches find the platform to be really simple, really easy to use. It's not complicated. So the feedback has been positive. So this is also part of our continuous school improvement plan that we submitted to the state last December, and actually December 2022. And so as a big component of providing this type of support to all of our students that need it, we are going to ask that we expand it to all of the students across the district. So that would mean all teachers and all MTSS teams would have access to the platform. So we've had a successful training with the teams. Again, easy to use implementation is something that, again, that the instructional coaches and our academic services team will support. And so that is already underway. So, for example, this Friday, the academic services team, the interventionists, some of the instructional coaches are going to be doing additional professional learning on the interventions and the platform and how to create those. We're going to take that learning to our administrators of each building on March 21st. And then in April, we'll have ongoing planning with the reading interventionists as they monitor those plans going into May testing. And then in May, we'll develop a plan for the entire implementation into next year. But again, we've had a successful pilot. It was a responsive platform, and so we're really asking for a recommendation to approve that, at least by our academic services committee when we get to the board meeting later